Hey there, welcome back. Now, in today's episode, I have a catch up with Michale Monteque. He's a really passionate guy about Home Assistant and AI technology.
I know that we've talked very briefly, like on emails and in the community a bit, but this is like the first real chit chat that we can have. So that's pretty cool.
Exactly. And I thought it'd be really cool to have a chat with you, Michale, because I'm just blown away with the stuff you're doing with AI. It seems to be a real passion of yours.
I'm just following the dopamine. I guess that's the best way to put it. Like the whole entire thing is fascinating,
Mhm.
but I guess it was always in the realm of like science fiction. Like this is like maybe before like GPT kind of exploded. So the best that at least I could do at the time was like NLP. That's like the most magical thing that you can do. Like is given a sentence, like can you tell like if it's an address or a number or if it's positive or negative sentiment? And then GPT hit, and I'm like, oh, this is perfect. This hits every single box that I needed to do, and the ideas, the things that you can do with it is so extraordinary. And I think the biggest thing that like the most exciting thing of this is you always hear about how you always hear those instances of when you look back retroactively or retrospectively, it's like, oh, I wish I was there when during the invention of the car or during these like key pivotal moments so I can like capitalize on that. And GPT hit the scene and I'm like, we're here, this is it, this is that one thing that will revolutionize everything and we have no excuse. Because when we look back, we're going to be those old people be like, yeah, I was there when this was invented. So no excuses.
Exactly. I really like that. So Michale, as you say, we've just had a few back and forth little chats on the email, but maybe if you can sort of give me a little bit of or the audience, a bit of an introduction to who you are, where you grew up, what got you. I'm assuming you're a developer by trade. That's what it sounds like. But if you can give me a little bit of an introduction, so we can understand what you're all about.
Sure. I'm never prepared for that whenever anyone asks me that. Okay, so yeah, my name is Michale Monteque. I have been in the professional developing field for I want to say over 13 years now. I started off with just doing, I guess you can call like a software test engineer. This was when I was in college. And then as an intern doing that, I came out of college into actual like front end dev. They just hired me, or a different company hired me. It was a digital advertising agency. And I realized very quickly, even though I had a lot of passion at the time around like iOS development and building smart home apps, that I knew nothing. Like I realized really quick when you get into the industry that you know very little, and school only teaches you the basics. So you get really good at Googling and figuring things out. And from there, I guess they had me do a lot of front end work, a bit of back end too as well. And I became very intimate with the idea of user experience. The fact that with front end, you know, that's what users interact with. Whenever anything goes wrong, even if it's a back end problem, they blame the front end because that's what they're touching and seeing. So you learn habits, you learn things, you learn to see things from other people's perspective, and you also learn how to tweak experiences to make it as enjoyable as possible. So then from there, working in the digital advertising space for about 8 years, uh, pandemic hit, and then I end up moving over to Amazon, and there I was more internal, so less like user facing and dealing with like big clients, and more like internal, like building on internal tools, but still the same concepts still persist. And because it's Amazon, right, they do things at scale, so definitely things became more technical, more robust, if you will. And this is like a secret, like, but they're not, they're still trying to catch up with like internally, like what does it mean for like front end development. At least that's what it feels like on my side. I'm pretty sure a lot of other folks would agree, but it's definitely brought up a lot of conversations, or at least it's put me in the space where I guess one of their tenets is like bias for action. It's like, well, what are you going to do about it? Like, how are you going to help move this forward? And learning, and at least for me, it's like fighting against culture, it feels like, but slowly but surely, like you chip out the pieces. And from my perspective, it's like you kind of gain this. You can help tell a bigger story. You can help other people come to understand uh, a new problem space, like how they can do things better, I guess is the best way to put it. And at the same time of me making that push, I was like, you know what, I'm getting kind of tired. I want like a break or like an escape. So I kind of went to like Home Assistant. I wanted to see if I can, you know, tinker out with the house a little bit. And I've done it before in the past, but you know, pandemic and everything, I was just too busy. So I kind of went back to it and then got like fell headfirst into like Home Assistant and then found Node-RED. And then at the same time, GPT came out. And I'm like, this is just way too much, but it's way too exciting. And then I started to see like intersections between both Home Assistant, AI, and the things that I've been experimenting with, and also things that I've been seeing at work. And it's been definitely informing back and forth. And I've seen that. I've spoken to a few other community members, and they're noticing the same things too. I've seen there's a guy that I talked to that worked with Uber, and he's noticed the same. Cross sections between what we're doing within, like personally within Home Assistant and smart homes, and how this translate into the professional sphere. Because I guess because this is brand new, it's that untested frontier. Everyone, even within like big orgs, are trying to catch up. They're trying to figure out like, how do you do this? What does it mean? What's the best user paradigm? And of course, how do they make money off of it? But no one knows. Everyone is trying to throw things to the wall and see what sticks. But we're in a very unique spot where we can kind of move the conversations in the right directions. So that's where I'm kind of sitting right now.
Fantastic. Now, you talk a lot about, as you say, Home Assistant. You're finding Home Assistant, and it's what I find very interesting. And I'm just going to put this to you. I was talking to someone the other day about this. What I find really interesting about Home Assistant is it's right in the middle. Because for me, there's sort of three levels of home automation at the moment.
Mhm.
You've got the real basic stuff. Well, coming from Amazon, you would know. You've got sort of the Echoes and these Google devices that are little
Mhm.
speakers. They can do a bit of smart home controlling of lights and stuff. And then you've got on the other side the Control 4 and these sort of really big, expensive home automation systems. And then in the middle, right in the sweet spot, you seem to find Home Assistant to me. It's just this incredible piece of software, and I'm just always fascinated when I hear Paulus talking about it because just the whole model that he's created for, first of all, the software being open source and the way that he's funding it through this decision made contribution towards Nebuchadnezzar, I think it's just so clever. And then, as you say, you tie in these Node-RED and these um, AI connections, and it's just fantastic. I mean, where do you think this is going to go, Michael?
Hmm. To be honest, like it can. This is going to sound cliche. This is going to
Mm.
sound cliche, but I will try to back it up. I think it has a possibility to go absolutely anywhere, and I'm glad it started in the open source space first, because then there is a lot of room for culture, um, both societal and especially like niche wise within like Home Assistant community. I feel like is a culture by itself,
Oh yeah,
has a very strong chance to influence the direction of how things go. Uh, because I do, because the world runs and revolves around money, and there's always someone funding something somewhere. Uh, they are going to essentially follow where the money is. And their whole job is going to basically listen to what the culture is saying and then try to do their best to deliver. And we see this now with a lot of different companies. Like if we go back in time, like Akara, they've been here for a long time. You have Lutron, all these different companies, they've existed before AI. And then now that AI is here, we see them trying to put it in. And again, we see them too throwing things against the wall to see what sticks. Of course, they have certain paid aspects of it, but because they weren't designed, they weren't. didn't build themselves with that in mind. They are essentially shoehorning this new concept, this new feature, way of being to fit within their existing paradigm. So they themselves, as big companies, are going to have to shift, but they can't just do it recklessly. They have a lot of shareholders and other people involved that they want to make sure they stay profitable. So they're going to continue to hedge their bets and throw things out very cheaply, very simply, and see what people like. And I suspect it's going to take the Uber model. And what I mean by that is that when we look at, let's say, the transportation industry, and then we see Uber. Prior to Uber, you caught a cab or you caught a bus, or you had a friend pick you up. But then Uber came in and they're like, we're going to democratize this. And instead of like these companies that own the cabs and they send them out, and of course, they like cab drivers, they make what they make, we are going to give people the power to basically become cab drivers. We're going to create a new industry where people have a new way of working, and as a result, people have a new way of a more convenient way of getting from one place to another. And they did this very cheaply. Like and I remember Uber at the very beginning being super convenient and super cheap, very novel, and everyone started moving towards it. And of course, you hear the cab industry crying and complaining about it, but because this was such a big shift in terms of value for society, we, for lack of a better way of putting it, didn't care. Like we were being like it solved a big need that we didn't really know that we had. And then once you start to, because it's there and it's integrated into society, like it's cheap for everyone to use. We now have airports reconstructing the way that they work so they can accommodate for Lyft and Uber and all these things, because now society have now welcomed Uber and Lyft and these other rideshare models into the ecosystem. Uber can raise their prices. Uber can do whatever they want now. Like they can basically hold us all by the metaphorical gonads and do what they want. And but that's because it's like the whole idea of, like, from a model perspective, I'm going to operate in the red until I reach like market saturation, and then I can do what I want because I get, like, you can't now live without me. So I assume that all of these companies, everyone is going to continue to throw things to the wall until they find things that stick. And once it sticks, they're going to keep it cheap, and they're going to make sure that everyone becomes hooked onto it. And once they're hooked, they're going to be like, I got you now. I get to do what I want. And sure, we'll listen to you a little bit in order to, like, keep the bar raising, like to raise the bar a little bit more. But I assume it's going to follow that model because that model has been repeated time and time again. So I see that happening. But the big difference is with all of those things like ride shares and I guess these big shifts, it's usually like one company or one entity that has the power and they're trying to test things out. Whereas because this is open source, we all have the power. We all get to choose. We all have the power to figure out what works. And if we don't like it, we don't have to use it. We can do it ourselves, which is what I've been pushing. Like, even if you don't like AI, that's fine. But it is in your best interest to at least figure it out and be a part of the conversation to say that this is how this should work. Otherwise, someone is going to choose for you.
I'm with you 100% there. Now, talking about AI, obviously you've got these big large language models that are being hosted by these big companies like ChatGPT, where you've got everything out there and basically it's accessing the internet, and you've got this broad range of information that you can utilize. But it seems now more and more people are looking at localized based models as well,
Mhm.
and connecting them to a finite resource so that you're actually learning and creating concepts and responses from a certain data set. Would I
Mhm.
be right in saying that that seems to be a change that's happening at the moment?
I think that is, maybe it's premature for me to tell because I feel like I'm looking at it from a different perspective. But I feel like within the smart home community, that is, I want to say, in line with the character or with the character profile of the smart home community. A lot of people get into it because convenience is, I think, probably the first cool thing that kind of catches people attention. But then the selling point and the staying point for a lot of it is your information stays local. You own and have the responsibility for everything. No one else has your data, and you essentially are the judge and jury on what happens to your data. And I think a lot of folks, the more discerning individuals, they this is what they in that is important to them, and I don't discount that. And as a result, because AI is currently, well, it starts off like, very open and like, as you said, connected to the internet, having it more localized definitely has a high appeal and falls in line with that tenet. I do think that because tech is what it is, it's going to get, my experience is that at the moment, because everyone is trying to, from the big companies, they're making it work, but they have a ton of resources, high compute. Uh, it works obviously very well on their side because they have all the intense resources for it. But us regular plebs, we don't have all of that. So
Yeah.
whenever we try and we do it on our computers, it's just not as good. And it's like once you tasted what good looks like, it's hard to go to anything less. So then, but because computers are what they are, it's going to get better, faster, and it's going to continue to trickle down to us where there's going to be, in the same way how we have, let's say, 720, 1080, and then 4K and then 8K. You can see the difference between 720 and 1080. You can see the difference between 1080 and 4K. But as you get into like 8K, like because of just what we are and our human limitations, we're gonna be like, I mean, like it feels nicer. Like I can feel that it's nicer. And if I have a big enough TV, then yeah, it looks nicer there. But honestly, like I can't really tell the difference between 4K and 8K, especially from looking at a phone. And I think AI models are going to get there where it's like, sure, this model N.0 is super fantastic. Like I can feel it, but like this model that's like 10 versions behind, it's actually doing a pretty good job, and it's livable. And I feel like once we're in that space, all bets are off. Like the local scene is going to just fly off the handles.
So, having a look at your own Home Assistant integration and system that you've got running there, what's some of the really cool stuff that you're doing at the moment with AI and Home Assistant?
Oh man, it's hard to enumerate. I can say at a broad level what, I mean, like there are like individually, like there's cool things like seeing what it looks like for letting AI kind of control everything. I think when I first got into the scene, that was the very first thing that I tried. Like, what if I just
I love
attach
that
all
video.
my APIs and just see what happens? And then it was a fun experiment. And then
Yeah.
seeing what came out of that, it's like, okay, now that I kind of went super big, how can I hone into different things that make sense? Like, where does it
Mm.
make sense? And even now, I remember the early conversations. People are like, hey, I don't see why AI would be useful. Coding it is just fine. And I'm like, you're right. Like coding it at this present point in time with where AI is and how we currently develop and make things, especially when we look at, let's say, Home Assistant, that'll be a good example. Prior to AI, Home Assistant and the way that we code, we have the YAML configs, we have just the regular way in which we set things up. And that's good. I mean, like, it makes sense. We can easily follow through if we like looking at YAML, or we can look at the UI, and we can set things up to the way that we like. But then now we have this new, let's call it contender in the ring, and it's so mythical that and amorphous that it can technically do any and everything depending on how you harness it. So my thing is, well, I'm going to test it in all the ways that I think is pretty cool and the things that I think is going to be useful. One of those things would be setting up your automations. What if right now I have to set up the automations? I have to say, if at this time this thing occurs, then do these set of things. But then if I can say that to AI, hey, if at this time do these set of things, and it's able to go through Home Assistant, look at all of the different configs, your entities, and just intuit and put that together and then save a script for you, now we're ending into the realm of human computer interaction. And for that, right, we have again, in the past, little tiny mouse and a keyboard, and that's how we interface. You have other cool things that I've seen in like school research where they use like eye peripherals where you can look on the screen, and then the way that you blink, you can double click. You have, especially now with the what do you call it?
The
Vision
brain
OS. Uh,
interface.
yeah, like you have. I'm thinking of like Apple and
Yeah.
Meta and their glasses, and how you look in this augmented reality space where you can have these little gestures on your fingers, and you can interact with like these digital virtual elements behind these glasses. Like this is human computer actor. Like we are figuring out how we as humans can interact with tech in the digital sphere. AI, though, right now we look at it as terms of like, oh, this is just text, and from text it can like summarize things and do things. I suspect, and my hypothesis is that it can do a lot more because it can interpret text and do these things. Does that change the way that we interact now with our computers? Can we now sit and reliably just say things and speak similar to what we see with like Iron Man and Jarvis, and he can just talk to it and it understands and it does things? Like, can we get there? It seems like it. So that's what I'm kind of poking at, I think, at a high level. But in the short term, the thing that is kind of getting my attention now is all of this is cool and fancy and nice and worth exploring. But for a lot of folks, they, let's just, I guess the kind way of putting it is that we are by nature very consumeristic. We like to consume. A brave few of us like to explore and to do and to produce. And it's often those producers that tell the story and put the things out there and kind of dictate what the consumers can consume. To that end, I I am trying to see, well, if we are simply consuming, that's fine. We need that. But how can, for those of us who want to do things like to augment ourselves, to do things better and faster, to whether we're producing or whatever the case is, how can we do that exponentially? And to put a concrete example, for instance, my wife, one of the things that it's probably, you may see videos floating out there soon, but my wife was, we had an issue where she does a lot of the cooking at home because she's a stay at home mom. And as such, one of her biggest headaches was meal prepping. Like, what am I going to cook for this week? It's a lot of with all the things that she has to do. That was just another thing on her plate where she just didn't have the mental resources to do it. Like she could, but she's like, I'm doing too much. I just don't like it. But then now, because of GPT, someone gave her the bright idea. It's like, hey, why don't you ask GPT for meals? And then she did, and she found out it's amazing. So now, instead of what took her, let's say, an hour to kind of sit down and figure out like what are we going to eat for the week, in about 5 to 10 minutes of simple conversation, she can do that. She's basically almost 5 times the ability of what she can do, which is amazing for her. Because then, and for me, I'm like, okay, are there other aspects in our lives in which AI can augment and accelerate the things that we do? So it's finding those productive nuggets and then figuring out, okay, if it can do that, how can the smart home ecosystem translate that into an easy way for we can take to advantage of it? I hope that came out right.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, it's to me, as you're saying, it's actually hard to because it's so powerful. It's hard to imagine and actually sit down and do the simple tasks that actually day to day we need to automate. So stepping the next level is obviously with the smart home. We've got this AI, we've got the hub, the home assistant within our house, and obviously we're communicating with physical things within our house like switches and lights and cameras and that. But what I'm really excited is as well is to see what this whole robotics side of things
Oh.
is. Have you got much of an insight into what's going to happen with that?
Unfortunately, no. I think robotics would be very interesting, to be honest. I in school, the idea of robotics very intrigued me, and then I found
Yeah.
computers. I'm like, well, nope, that's for me. Um, I'm actually quite. I think it would be fascinating to see what comes out of that. I feel like I'm wondering, because AI introduces a sense of randomness, if how viable it would be, or let's call it that. Let's how viable it would be in that constraint, because then there's a certain level of rigor that's needed for things of a mechanical nature, because mechanics can only go so far. Things can only stretch and do so much. And if people are involved, there needs to be safety measures involved. So I'm curious to see how AI can augment or accelerate things in that capacity. Um, and maybe it may start as simple as analytics. Things that how to phrase this in in the same way that, for instance, mechanically, right, we have a light switch and we turn it on, we have the expectation that the light turns on in an almost infinite, likely quick amount of time.
Mm.
And then, but we also recognize that if we were to add AI somewhere in that mix, between the network call to the AI and then the any network calls that's required internet wise, there or not, or depending on your machine, it may be powerful or not. There is a sense of a delay, and because the expectation, the human interaction, like the user experience, is when I interact with this thing, my expectation is that it be quick. Then having AI in there gives a very poor experience. Even if it gets it right 100% of the time, due to that delay, it's a poor experience. But then there are things that are okay if it takes a long time, like background tasks, things that can kind of compute in the background and then come to the foreground. If there are things like that, I suspect that in robotics, if there are things of that nature, I think AI will do extremely well in that capacity. But then again, because we are where we are and things only get better, I'm assuming that there's going to be a certain point at which AI is going to be just as quick as flipping a light switch, and then at that point, again, all bets are off. I think we're going to start to see even. Uh, I I honestly can't even fathom at this point the amount of leaps and bounds that we would have mechanically. Though saying that, I also recognize that that also means that we have a greater capacity for evil, if you will, bad actors, because there's always that aspect. I feel like I'm going to get derailed if I go down that path, because there have been some very interesting things that's been popping up on my feed in terms of how people have been using AI, and because I'm only looking at it optimistically, when I'm hearing this other side, it's baffling my mind. I'm like, I didn't know people would think of going down that path. It makes sense. It makes sense. I wouldn't do it, but I mean, like, it's. I never thought of doing these things, and people do.
So, sort of reeling it in a little bit, obviously,
Yeah.
you've got a huge passion for Node-RED, and I've dabbled very, very on the surface in Node-RED. I think I've literally opened it up and I've created one or two super small integrations or automations because currently for me, I'm finding so I'm not a YAML coder at all. I'm
Mm,
not I dabble in pasting bits of code here and there, but I
yeah.
normally get problems. But currently for me, the Home Assistant automations are able to do a reasonable amount.
Yes. Yes.
But I honestly do really like the look of Node-RED, and I find that the idea of having a box and then drawing lines between actions is really cool. I used to
Mm,
work with a very similar type of system years ago. I was in the CRM industry, and there was a product called Pivotal, which had a graphical workflow tool behind it, but it seemed to be a lot easier.
yeah.
I know you've offered me free access to your course, which is really really wonderful. But time wise, it's been crazy.
No,
So
I get it. I get it.
yeah, but tell me a little bit about Node-RED and the power of Node-RED.
Ooh, all right. Just pull up a chair, man. I need to pull up mine because we're gonna get into it. I guess to keep it super simple,
Mm,
what I remember when I first got into Home Assistant, I never knew anything of Node-RED. I
mm,
got into Home Assistant, and I remember at the time of getting into it, the UI was minimal. Like they had some UI stuff there, but
yeah.
it seemed like primarily you're sticking with YAML. And
What
as an
year was
int-
that you got into it, Michael? Sorry to interrupt.
don't let me date myself. Let me see. Uh, okay, so technically, I got into it. I got deep into it. 20, 2025, late 2022,
Ah, okay.
late 2022. Um, So I remember them having like graphical interface, but I remember things being, if I were to give it a number generously, I wouldn't say it was like 50-50. Like there was a lot of stuff that really you should be using YAML for, because a lot of stuff was like, oh, to use this integration, go to the YAML and like set things up. It's like, all right, fine, I guess. And if you're going to use the automation portion of it, you can do it. But it seemed like you get like the power and control that you're looking for, it was best suited for you to use YAML. And I've seeing what's his name, Jeff, uh, the automate the boring stuff. I believe his name's
Oh,
Jeff.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
Psycholab, yeah.
Yes, so I remember seeing a lot of his videos, and he, from my perspective, I'm like, wow, you're really good at YAML. Like, you must be really into this, because seeing the stuff that he's able to do with it, I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to do. I
Mm,
don't like the baby stuff that this UI is giving me isn't cutting it. Like, I want to get into it, but I just can't get behind YAML. And then as an engineer, like I've worked with JavaScript, I've worked with typed languages, and maybe some less more fluid languages like JavaScript, and but the fact is, like with those, you it's meant for development, like to build things with. And anytime I've used YAML in a professional setting, it's always for configurations. Like it's to quickly get a config out to say that under these conditions, this is what should be sent like as default values to these things. And every engineer that I've ever worked with, we always despise having to go and update YAML or Jinja templates or anything. Like we've hated it, and so much so that we've actually migrated it from it. But that's another story. So when seeing YAML, I'm like, oh, is this what I have to deal with? And I remember for a very brief moment, I did a quick Google search because I didn't know, and then Node-RED came up, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, oh, this seems interesting. And then I remember putting the add-on into Home Assistant. I remember seeing the different nodes for the things that Home Assistant can do, and I remember just doing like a small test run. And the moment that I pressed the button and then the lights came on and it was just nodes and lines on the screen, I'm like, this is it. I will do this all day long. I That's what got me there. But then looking into it more, because it also, from, I guess this is maybe unique to me, because I am used to JavaScript and the language that Node-RED is kind of based around, like looking at JSON files and configs in that sense, it was basically speaking a language that I spoke very well, so it allowed me to move extremely fast. I also recognize that not everyone has that level of, not everyone in the home assistant space or the smart home space
mm.
are developers or are of that technical mindset. They're just extreme hobbyists, and I understood that. So people not gravitating towards Node-RED, I completely understood. But I still would like them to try it out, because there's a lot you can do without ever having to write like actual lines of code. And as a result, because I knew it was web based, like it's basically like HTTP calls, uh, I knew that that now gave us an extreme power that by Home Assistant self, you won't have the ability to do. And again, to preface all of this, this is for those of us who simply want to go way beyond what Home Assistant has to offer. I think Home Assistant does quite a bit by itself. You can get very far with it. But I wanted to experiment on the fringe. So as a good example, I saw that when I saw that what do you call it? When OpenAI had like made GPT like available and they had like the API for it, I'm like, huh, right now this is so new that nothing is available in Home Assistant. No one has done anything. It literally came out yesterday. No one
Mm.
has done anything. Do I wait for someone to come up with an add-on to do it? And if they do come up with an add-on, would it have the things that I need in order to do and answer the questions that I want to answer? Do I want to wait for someone else to basically start driving this narrative? And what would kind of, and maybe this is a bit of pride and hubris, I have all of these ideas now. I would hate to be the one to say, man, I thought of that idea first and someone else kind of implemented it. And now I feel like I'm the person who's talking about it second. I'm like, no, no, no. I have Node-RED. Like I can do this. Like I can make the network calls to their APIs and grab it. I now can take information from Home Assistant and manipulate it and then call Home Assistant to do a thing. Like I can do an experiment the way that I want. Why not? And hence the heavier dependence on Node-RED, where I'm like, yeah, it basically freed me to do everything that Home Assistant can do and then more why not? Well, like, why not? Actually, I do know why not. If you don't care about that, then don't. Then don't go down this rabbit hole. But if you want to experiment and like get really deep into it and push like home automation to its extreme limits, yeah, like get into it.
Yeah, I am definitely once I manage to get through a bit of a backlog at the moment, I'm really going to actually go in there and start running through those modules because I actually tried it way before you offered me access to that. And I was really struggling. The part I struggled with was when you start having to put the JSON code in to access certain components
Yeah,
within Node-RED.
I can see that.
Because I love the drag and drop and those sort of things, but the moment you have to start writing that bit of code, that's where I was struggling, and that's what I'm trying to sort of be as an intermediate in my role is trying to bridge the gap between guys like you that really understand these things and then me and then a whole lot of people who are way behind me
Mhm.
who have no IT knowledge and they're just starting with Home Assistant today
Yeah.
and they're buying something like a green or whatever where literally it's installed, they plug it in and then they start using it. I'm trying to be that intermediary to help people get that next step.
No, makes sense. I will say that something that, again, because it's still relatively new and people don't think about it in this aspect, but it's better. I'm going to use an example. I had my I can code fine. Like I know how to
Mm.
code and develop things, and I know I can do it fairly quickly. But because I do this as a day job, I don't want to. Like I don't want to come home and then do work a second time. So I
Yeah,
want to do things fast and don't not have to think about it and basically accelerate my ability to do. I've found that using GPT does just that. So I'd have
really.
questions about Node-RED, and I'm like, okay, I want to do this thing, but I can't. How do I do this? And then I explain it to GPT. It gives me the code. I put it in. I run it. It works. But because, of course, things are never are is what they seem. Every now and then it may get things wrong, but because I have technical knowledge, I can see. I'm like, oh, that's wrong. You need to fix this part, and then it fixes it, and then I'm off to the races again. But even in it's things are getting so good so fast that the application I built an application for my wife for cooking. Right, she was using GPT to do the whole recipe stuff, but she didn't want to. She had a hard time keeping track of the recipes that she liked. So I'm like, oh, that's an easy application. It's like a 2 to 3 page application where you can talk to it and save it, and then you can look at your recipes again. But I don't want to write all the code, so I literally went to GPT. I'm like, hey, I have this React app. I need these 3 pages. One page is a home page. The other page is where I can go and see the recipes, and this other page is going to be the chatbot. And then it wrote out all the code. And then for each page, I'm running it, and I'm like, okay, this page is a bit bare. I paste back the code. I'm like, hey, I need a button in this top right corner that does this. I need it to do that. Like I explain it, and then it rewrites the code. I paste it. I run it. It works. I'm like, huh, great.
That's
All of
crazy.
this that I would have to do manually, I did in literally I can't even fathom like how much faster it was. It would
Yeah.
take me a day to probably put a lot of stuff together, and what would take me a day took me under an hour.
That's
So
just crazy, isn't it?
it is literally accelerating every human thought. And I think for folks who are apprehensive about Node-RED, or not just Node-RED, but anything in general, give it to GPT. Ask questions. Like treat it how if you had the people that they watch on YouTube that they're like, oh my god, they know so much. Treat GPT like that. Ask them questions as though you were going to ask me or anyone else, and it will do a better job than I can. I'm telling you, it will.
That's super cool. I must actually use it more. I must admit, I get so down the path of doing what I do, and then I sort of forget that there's these
I
amazing tools out
same
there.
same thing, same thing.
It,
It took me. My wife caught on, and I'm like, why do I
yeah.
keep forgetting to do that?
Now, another thing, I saw your video recently about the number plate recognition. Now, I've recently I ran my Home Assistant on a Pi for many years. I've run it on a Yellow. I've run it on a Odroid, but I've recently just taken the big step of installing it on a mini PC,
Oh,
plugging in
nice.
a Coral, and loading up Frigate. And this to me is the latest cool kid on the block, man. I tell you, that
Yeah,
thing is amazing.
it is
It is
fantastic.
the way that Coral, I plugged my Coral in, went from 80%. I've got just one camera at the moment, 80% processor time down to like 5%. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah, it
unbelievable.
is amazing. I'm waiting for them to do that for AI.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was thinking, because really that's doing basic AI, isn't it? So I'm sure that that next level type of AI is coming where we can run it on that small mini PC with a Coral or two plugged in, and that's what I'm really excited for is seeing
Yeah.
that local stuff that we can do coming soon. Do you think
Yeah.
it's what do you think it's years away or?
I won't say it's years.
Mm,
Mm, I don't think it's years. I honestly think that someone somewhere have thought it up. They're just trying to figure out how much it's worth before they give it out. Personally,
mm,
but I'm a conspiracy theorist, I guess. Um, I remember being at CES and hearing some of the things from a lot of these bigger companies, and I know Nvidia has been working very hard in that arena,
mm.
making AI available to the masses. So I suspect that this idea of what we have, like a good example or a good analog to this is I remember having my Coral TPU and seeing how it works for Frigate and knowing that it's using a lot of the machine learning power is being done on that device. And
Mhm.
then when I saw AI, I'm like, oh, it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
Why can't I use like my Coral TPU? And then I remember doing a bit of Googling and it's like,
Mhm.
well, you're going to need not like this machine is specific for machine learning and how, I guess, I don't know the technicals, but with however they're doing their computation with the machine learning, it's not the same computations that AI requires, and because that requires a GPU. I guess however the math is mathing is different
Yeah.
on the two devices, and as a result, the TPUs won't work for that. So I'm like, okay, I mean, like, I get it, I get it. But I suspect that because we have these TPUs, we're gonna have the analog for it because I'm sure someone somewhere had the issue of I have a computer, I can't run it that well, and the TPU came into existence. I suspect that it has to make the most sense. I'm just not qualified to build it though.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to that. But coming back to what you were saying earlier in the discussion about that, being able to talk to Home Assistant and say, build me a automation to do this. That to me is going to be really, really cool. When do you have you got any sort of idea how far that is away?
I mean, technically, you can do it now. I
Yeah, I saw you
technically,
did a video on it. Yeah.
yeah, technically, like if you want to do, let's call it the scrappy way, the and part of the course that I've kind of put out, and just in general on YouTube, like I try to put out as much information as I can.
Mm,
The concept is essentially there, right? So if technically, let's see, if I'm going to try to explain this in like uh, simplistic terms, because I feel like I can go down a really deep rabbit hole. If AI, if we now, like right now, if we go to GPT, we can talk to
mm,
it and it writes all the text out on the screen. And we can even go as far as to say to it, like, hey, I need this particular JSON file or this JSON structure that gives me X, Y, and Z, right? It can do that. And it takes our words and and it basically converts the output, the answer, into a text format. But again, code is nothing more than just text compiled in a way that a computer can understand. And our interface, like between us as humans and Home Assistant, what sits in the middle, that translator, is from if you're using Node-RED, JSON, and if you're using Home Assistant, YAML. So then it's like, okay, if technically I can create automations using YAML, and GPT can create text and can technically generate the YAML file, what if it was trained to simply take what I'm saying, look at all of my devices, and then construct that YAML file?
yeah.
And then Home Assistant is, again, I try to give a hint to Home Assistant. I'm like, hey, look, if you can have us to dynamically ingest YAML files and then you can just run it and do stuff, that'd be fantastic. Because then now I can just say it, and for them, because they're building it, they can make it like home baked into Home Assistant, where I don't have to go through Node-RED. I don't have to go through anything. It's just like an integration that sits within Home Assistant that where, hey, now you can dynamically generate these things. And it may come out, it may, I would assume that the very first iteration of this would simply be an automation helper. You sit on the automation screen, like you're in like the whole settings, you click on devices and automation, or you hit on the automation section, and then you click a button and you say, I want to build XYZ, blah, 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 blah. And then the automation appears and you get to verify if it's right.
Mm,
And then you say save. and then the next iteration beyond that is like, okay, here is this service call that you can make to assist or to anything, and now assist can generate this thing for you. If like, that's technically doable. I've technically proved that point with using AI and Node-RED, and have it just generate the JSON for me, and then I pass it to Home Assistant, and then it just does the thing. So it's we can do it. Everyone can do it now, but it's going to be janky. That's the best way to put it. It's going to be janky. So do it at your own discretion. But because we can do it, it means that they can also do it, and they can make it more home baked, more finessed, if you will. So we can do it with less setup and teardown.
Okay, so it's on the verge of happening. I'm assuming
I
if it's that
suspect it's on the
possible.
verge. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I would say that's probably a safe bet. And I would, and again, I'm speaking on the outside because I don't know what they're saying. I'm not in their meetings or anything like that, so I don't know if they don't do it. One reason I can see it not being done would probably be for safety concerns. That's the biggest thing I can see, because then it's a YAML file. If it goes wrong, it can crash the computer. Additionally, if you have a bad actor that can somehow dynamically generate that on your behalf, and they do it poorly, then they have access. So, from a security point of view, I can see that probably being the biggest pausing point for them. But we're already doing so much already. I don't see why that can't be the case.
Yeah, that is really cool. Now, I wanted to ask you, have you ever played with Sesame AI? That's a new
Sesame AI?
voice.
I
Yeah.
have not, although it sounds familiar. I feel like they come out with there's new AI stuff popping out like every 40 seconds, so it's hard to keep track.
This is I think they released it about 2 or 3 months ago. So it's basically the best chat bot that I've ever heard. You
Oh,
should give it a
really?
try. It's just
All right, I gotta
unbelievable.
look at that.
The level of intonation of the voice, the speed that the person responds at, and yeah, it's pretty impressive. I tell you, I cannot wait for us to have something like that on our local speech recognition in Home Assistant. It's going to be it literally, you're talking to the person and they just get what you say. It's incredible.
Interesting. Is it more so like the content or the quality of what their response are like, or is it simply like the voice and how they're responding, or the combination of the both? Like, I guess the question is, how different from 11 Labs are they?
So I haven't played with 11 labs, but anything that I've heard before is just blown out of the water. Just the way that it talks. So it responds immediately. Like I literally, you stop talking and it's responding. Like the voice
Interesting.
starts talking immediately. There's no delay. Secondly, the expression of the voice, the pauses, the it can almost understand even your actual, not only the words but actually the way that you say them as well.
Hmm.
So it
Interesting.
can actually, there's a lot of people testing it out and things on the internet, but this to me is just unbelievable when you can start having a discussion like that with an AI. Just unbelievable.
That's interesting. Yeah, I
Yeah.
I think it'll have a lot of different ramifications. I know OpenAI had a demo that kind of demoed their let's call it chat bot person.
Mm.
I don't remember what they referred to it as, but it had it's how exactly how you described. They did exactly the same thing where they can talk to it, and it would respond, and it felt very human. Even down to like if you talk and interrupt it, it will stop as though it's
Yes,
another human. So
yeah.
it was doing a lot of that stuff, and I remember when they demoed, I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. I don't, but it's almost like a genie in a bottle. Like now that we have that, then it now makes me wonder in terms of uh, I don't know if you've experienced it. Actually, I feel like it's a universal experience
Mhm.
when you go on hold, like you call something, you call a company, you need help with like tech support or whatever the case is, and then you get the robot, and you're like, I don't want to like operator, like I want to speak to a person, but I feel like on the other line won't be a person. It will be that thing, that whatever AI that is, that's so human like, will be that. And then I guess the question that we all have to grapple with is that okay? Like if they can do exactly what a human can do and sound like a human, are we cool with that? Like I don't know. I think ethics is we're gonna have to really sit down and be ethical about this.
It's a huge question and dilemma, right, as to where it's going to go. Yeah, I honestly don't know. I mean, if you look at the speed at which all this AI has sort of come out of the woodwork in the last 2 or 3 years, it's just amazing. And yeah, I mean, you look sort of 5, 10, 15 years, where can it go? Hey, I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah, I think it's going to have a lot of ripple effects because of just it's going to have a lot of ripple effects across many industries, and I think it's going to change the way that we interact with each other,
Mm,
businesses, and other technologies. Like it's gonna like I don't know if you've seen I Am Robot, but they have like a
no, but I
society
know
where
the
now robots exist and they have their tenets that they must follow. But it seems like society has evolved to a point where we accept robots and we accept and we all know our place. Like we all have a way of interacting with each other and we all accept it. I don't think we have anything like that because the only thing we interact with are other humans and maybe animals. So now that we have this new thing that is I don't want to call it sentient, but ex, feigns sentience. How are we going to? What is our rules of engagement for that now?
Yeah, I don't think anyone knows at the moment, Michael, and I think
No.
that is the real challenge, eh? But getting back to sort of a more local thing, what would you say
Yeah.
is your favorite piece of smart home hardware that you've
Oh,
got at the moment? Or
smart home
yeah,
hardware.
yeah.
Ah,
So, is it a camera? Is it a smart lock? Is it a voice activated, you know, home assistance preview edition? Is it
that
a
is
sensor?
interesting.
What do you absolutely love?
Hmm, that's a very interesting question. Um, that's a hard one. I want to
It's okay.
say, yeah, I want to say it's the when you mentioned that two things came to mind.
Mm.
Let me make sure. Yeah, two things kind of came to mind. The very first one is from a utilitarian point of view, the thing that we interact with the most, and it's like we have to, is the lock for the front door. Like we have to go through the front door, but we have the issue. Like my wife and I, we forget to lock the door. So the fact that like my smart home will see that, hey, it's been unlocked for 5 minutes. That's too long. I'm gonna lock it back for you. So, and it's also one of those things where because if the automation stops working, we will leave and come back and be like, why is the front door open? Oh, we've made a mistake. Mistakes were made. And it seems like the automation had stopped working. So we know like it's one of those things where it's like we're dependent on it now at this point. And then in the same vein, something that I've also set up is we try our best to set the alarm too. We're just terrible at safety, apparently. I guess we just live we I think we just live too free. But we also have like an automation that will, if we're gone, if it senses that no one is home, it will then arm the house and also lock the door just in case. So it'll arm the house and the alarm will be like set. So that way, even when we come back and the alarm turns on, it's like, oh, we didn't set it, but I'm glad the house set it for us. Like it's like it's almost as though the house is watching our back. And I think that level of comfort, that safety, that safe, like it feels like a safety blanket kind of over your shoulder. Where if I mess up because my kid was like crying and I got frazzled, and then we just end up leaving, and I forget like the basic things of safety, someone is watching my back or something is watching my back. So I think from a utilitarian point, that's like my favorite. But then if I'm going to refer to like devices, honestly, I think it may be just the phone because it's like the next powerful thing in the house and a lot of things kind of pivot around it. So sure, we have like motion sensors and different things like that. But until we can have some better way of like biometrically watching people, and again there's probably ethics around that too as well, having being able to track the phone in terms of which room that you're in and kind of detecting that is kind of helpful, because then I have like some automations where it will say if so and so is like, depending on, I need to send a message out, like I need to alert someone of something, but instead of making the message throughout the entire house, I can now search for wherever that phone is and I'll make a message in that room specifically. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. I'd like to decouple it from the phone, but right now the phone is like the next most powerful thing here. So I would say those are the two things that I kind of like.
Cool. No, no, that is. I would agree. Those two, I definitely. I've recently been playing with the SwitchBot lock, which
Ah,
has got
yes.
the AI. It's got the face recognition,
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah, I've
and
seen.
that is pretty cool, man. Within a second, recognizes your face and opens the door.
Yeah,
It is pretty amazing. It is, yeah. These technologies are just, yeah, they're moving so fast, and and I think a lock is quite a tricky one because when you have unreliability on a lock, and I see a lot of people complaining about smart locks that
hmm,
they're either ugly or they fail or whatever. It's a real critical element of your smart home.
yeah,
And I certainly know a lot of people are very scared to connect their lock to their home assistant or to any, smart home app because they think someone's going to try and break in. And,
yeah.
the way I look at it, if they want to break into your house, just break a window. It's pretty easy.
That's my thing. Is I think and it's I guess a running joke for some people that I talk to, like within the
Yeah.
space, where I get the idea for like local and having things safe and secure in that aspect. But then it's like I know within fighting, right, like war, like no plan survives first contact, or you can run into a fight with all the plans, but all those plans go out the window when you get hit in the face. And for me, it's like the same with like any of this local stuff. Sure, you want to be local, but realistically, if someone looks at your house, they're not going to come for the technical stuff. Chances are, like, we're going to be the most technical person on the premises. They're going to go at it the old fashioned way, and they're going to pick the lock. And then what are you going to do like outside of that? Like, I'm because have you seen like the lock picking? There's like a guy on YouTube that like
There's,
the lock pick.
there's a lot of them.
And he's so good at picking locks. I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that a lot of these like fancy smart locks that we have, they're probably like very trash in terms of like lock picking safety. So yeah, don't worry, they're not gonna like get into your system and then crack your code and do that. They're gonna just pick it the old fashioned way. Don't you worry.
Exactly. Yeah, no, no, I'm with you there 100%. Yeah. Now, another question is obviously you're keen on smart home assistant. I am as well. Have you tried any other of the sort of home automation platforms that are out there at the moment? And
Oh.
what was your experience with them?
So I've recognized I have the self awareness to know that if like I see shiny things and I will want to play with the shiny things, and then I will be derailed, and I'll have a lot of different shiny toys around me and nothing will work. So I've been very careful as to noting like, oh, like I've seen Habitat, I've seen a few of them. I know Shane Watley, he's talked about a few. There's one, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but it feels like it has the same aesthetics or way of working like Node Red, where a lot of the automations are like flow based, like you can wire it
Mhm.
up.
Is
And I'm
that
like, oh,
Homey we're talking
I
about?
think that may be
Yeah,
Homey.
Homey's got they've got a super cool graphical tool.
So I'm like, I'm like, wow, I'd like to try that. If I can, the less things that I'd have to have dependencies on, the better. But then I also recognize that it is if I think Hermosi probably said this the best. He's like, if I look at something and think that it's cool and I want to do it, then I probably don't know enough about it to engage with it. And as a result, because it looks really cool, I'm pretty sure that the several years that I have of just setting things up here with Home Assistant and Node-RED and all of that, if I were to go down that route, uh, I will probably head down there and have a lot of half done things, and it's just at the end of the day would be quote unquote a waste of time. So then I simply make note, and then if in the future at some point that whatever I have just does not work for whatever reason, I can go into my pocket and be like, well, Homie was there. I wonder if they solve this particular issue and have all the other things I need. And then I'll probably go and take it serious. The only other thing I would say that the only two other things that I've probably made an attempt to try to actually use and really experiment with was what's it called? The iPhone, their
HomeKit?
HomeKit, because
Yeah.
that's where I started first. Like you have the
Oh,
iPhone,
okay.
that's like the very first thing that you can try before
Oh,
having
okay.
anything else. So I started there, but I knew personally like this is too simple, and I
Yeah.
think that's the big issue with like Apple and Google and Amazon. Like their stuff is not. home, it's not smart home first, it's like smart home second, because you have the phone, it's meant for other things, they just so happen to add smart home stuff after the fact, so it's never really super robust. And same thing for Amazon Echo and all of these other things, they weren't smart home first, and it kind of shows, at least to me, it shows. So with all of those devices, I'm like, well, yeah, I've tried it with, I've gave it like the good old college try with HomeKit, but it just didn't fit all of the boxes. And I'm also less incentivized to use it because my wife refuses to get an iPhone. She will rather go without a phone than to have an iPhone. So I'm like, if you're gonna be, if we're gonna be a house divided, Home Assistant is our best shot because it's platform agnostic. So that was my criteria. So I haven't really gone down that route. The only other thing that I've given like another good old college try, and I actually think I may incorporate it a little bit more, is N8N. It's basically Node-RED,
Oh.
like fancier but cousin, I guess. Uh, I am really digging it. I'm really digging it. It has its shortcomings, but I only know that now because I'm so deep within Node-RED, so I can see where things differ. And the thing, I'm still very happy that I started with Node-RED first, and I would still probably, depending on the person and their use case, would still say use Node-RED first, because in terms of integrating with Home Assistant, it does a way better job, or I feel like it's way better and easier in that aspect. N8N, it can, but I'm finding it a bit more cumbersome. But regardless, I think those are like the two other platforms I've attempted to really utilize.
So I tell you what I've done. I've played with a few other devices, other systems, and there's one thing that always brings me back to Home Assistant, and it's the community. Because
Mm,
these other systems, they've obviously each one has got its own way of doing it, and some of them have got really cool things like that workflow with Homey. But what it comes down to is that I can, in Home Assistant, I can literally find someone telling me how to do literally anything in Home Assistant, either via video or via a blog somewhere or something. You literally, everything has been done. And
yeah.
you can, as long as you're willing to search and you're willing to go step by step through it, you can do anything with homes. And that's what I love about it. It's recent. I don't know, did you get involved with the community days on 24th of May?
No, I did not know about it.
Oh, so Home Assistant actually set up an international community day on the 24th of May. So
That's
I put
cool.
my hand up for Auckland. We actually had 16 guys, well, 16 guys, one lady that turned up, and we had sat for 2 hours in one of the little rooms at McDonald's.
Oh,
Man, it was
nice.
cool. It was
That's
so
pretty
cool.
cool.
Yeah, and we're having our next meeting is this month. We're meeting at the Innovation Center for Fish and Paykel, and yeah, it's such a cool thing to actually be communicating face to face with other Home Assistant user.
That'd be really cool. Yeah, I'd have to go. I have to look for that now.
Yeah.
I guess I've been very tunnel vision with a lot of the things that I've been into, but that sounds actually pretty awesome. I'm suspecting that there may be a bit of a community here, uh,
Oh yeah, there must be.
but but yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, to that point though, the whole community aspect. Um, I wonder how much would that change when put to a lot of the AI stuff that's out there, because in the same way how I have an issue and I can go to the community and there's a blog, a forum, a video somewhere that does it. If these companies are really integrating themselves and trying to be at the forefront, realistically, I'm assuming they can easily feed their information to some AI model, and then now any question I have, that model will tell me, will probably explain it like I'm 4 years old. Like it'll just do that. So then, if it can do that, what would happen to a lot of the communities? Like, just a thought that kind of popped into my mind.
Yeah, I think in a way it'll be a shame because
Mm,
the community is actually just unbelievable. I mean, the people I've met through this whole thing, people. What's amazing me, another thing that's amazing me that's popped up that I would have never guessed. You've got guys like Lewis and the guys at Apollo Automation who have
mhm.
started up these tiny little micro businesses
Yeah,
building sensors. I
yeah.
mean, who would have? I think the guys at Apollo told me that last year they built 70,000 sensors between two
That
guys
is that I
based
think
out of
is
Kentucky.
I think that's pretty amazing. To be honest, like I am both happy for and slightly jealous of Lewis because I'm like, I have these ideas, but I'm not technically like software wise, I'm fine. But when it
Mm,
comes to like the moment we go into the hardware space,
mm.
it's like I feel like I've been cut off at the knees, and like I
Yeah.
don't know what I'm doing as well, and I need a lot of help. And but I think like the coolest aspect of a lot of this stuff is the physical hardware that enables a
Yeah.
lot of these things. And I'm like, man, like I'm like, way to go, Lewis, and dang, I wish I had like a Lewis dad to help me out too.
I must say, I have started playing with the ESP32, just taking an ESP32 room board, flashing it, wiring up a DHT22 sensor for temperature, humidity, wiring in a MHZ19 for CO2. It is super cool. And then 3D printing a little case. It's a really cool add-on to the software side of things. I would
It is.
definitely recommend it. Worth giving a bash.
I guess funny story. The I remember I wanted to do like room like level presence, like room presence
Oh yeah,
sensing,
yeah.
and I got one of those ESP32 boards, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to do it. But today's the day I'm going to do it. I know nothing about like hardware and flashing things. Like I know of the concepts, but I've never done it
Mm,
before. I'm going to do it. And I remember sitting down, connecting it to the computer,
yeah.
and then I remember trying to flash it and it just would not connect. I'm like, why isn't this working? And I spent like an hour and a half trying to figure out like why. Like, did I buy a bad board? Is the computer broken? Let me switch my computer. Maybe it's the browser, this and that. And then it turns out that I was just using a USB cable that did not support data
Didn't
transfer.
have the
And I'm
data
like,
link.
if this was my first attempt, and out the gate I'm doing bad, like this is just
Oh,
gonna, it's just downhill from here. So I, again, I really would like to do hardware stuff, but if that was my first attempt, I'm in for a bad time.
I would give it another go, Michael. Seriously, it to me it was super um, satisfying to actually build something and then it works,
Yeah,
and then print a little case that it fitted in. And yeah, there's it was actually my first project that I ever did. Was, I don't know if you've seen that. There was a project that came out quite a few about 3 years ago, which is it's a little light sensing diode that you
yeah.
connect to the ESP32, and then you put it on your smart meter, and it measures the flashing of your smart meter, and then
Oh, that's
gives you
cool.
a power monitor reading in Home Assistant.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
That
it's
is
actually the
cool.
first project I ever tried with the ESP32. It's fun.
I would, I want, I'm going, I do plan on doing it, like to
Yeah.
get deeper into it. Like I want to. I also feel like as part of the building process,
Mm.
having, I don't have one, but to have like a 3D printer, I feel like it's, you're not complete without a 3D printer at that point. Like you have like I have a ton of these boards lying around, but I'm like, I'm it's, my wife will not like seeing these circuit boards just sitting around a place looking like they don't belong. Like I need a case to put them in and everything, but I do want to get into that.
I would definitely. So I held off buying a 3D printer for a long time. And then last year I got a Creative. It's like a Creality, sorry. So it's sort of the cheapest one you can get.
Yeah,
And it is really, really cool. It's quite
nice.
fascinating seeing that you can actually put it in, and, you know, just you upload the software. Well, first of all, this one doesn't have internet connectivity. So I found this version of something called Octoprint that you can download, put in an SD card, stick it in the Raspberry Pi, and then that will control your 3D printer.
Oh, wow.
How cool is
Wow.
that? So I mean,
That
I
is
was pretty
interesting.
lucky. I managed to get Creality to send me one of their machines, and I tried it out, and it's a lot of fun. Seriously.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to try it out, man. I have to try it. I'm a believer.
Oh, anyway, Michael, we probably I've had you on the line for over an hour now. It's been really, really cool chatting. Um,
Same.
is there anything else you wanted to share before we sort of finish up?
Oh, sh- no. I had a suspicion you were gonna ask this question. I'm like, I don't think I have anything wise or quippy to say. Besides from everyone just needs to get good hours of sleep because I don't. I stay up long hours into these rabbit holes, and it's probably not good for my health. I'm getting way more gray hairs than I should. but but yeah, I mean, I think in general, if I were to leave with anything, the one thing I feel that everyone should do, should at least try is to explore, like to explore, because it's easy to sit and wait for people to come up with things and then give it to you and for you to consume. But even if you're not producing anything, at the very least, learn and figure it out for yourself. That way, you don't get taken advantage of, because that's how, like, I think of my mom, and even now with how AI is coming on the rise. I was listening to another creator, and he made it. He made a fascinating connection, and I half agreed with him and half don't. But I think at the base level, I think we all agree that because of AI, it now has put a premium on data. Everyone wants to train AIs and to do things,
Mm.
and that in and of itself is now going to uh, lead to maybe more unscrupulous behavior along the internet. People may be after your data a lot more. So I think a lot of the home assistant community, in terms of having a tighter watch on your data, they are in the right direction, right?
Yeah.
Because everyone wants it. And even though your information by itself doesn't mean much, the fact that they're going around and doing all of this stuff, no one wants to be taken advantage of. So being able to understand the landscape in which we're in, that information makes you make better decisions as you traverse the internet and deal with people and buy certain things. You're more aware. So I would say at least learn about it.
Yeah. No, no, I think those are wise words from you there, Michael, to finish off with, because yeah, it's this big animal and it's just growing and growing and growing. And as you say, LLMs, that's what they do. They consume data. The more data they've got, the better they can produce outputs. So, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, as you say, in the last 15, 20 years, data has certainly been a resource that people have been after. But I think, yeah, going forward, it's just going to go crazy,
Yeah, it's
because,
going to be a premium.
yeah, exactly. So, no, awesome, Michael. Thank you so much once again. It's been really great having a chat and getting to know you.
Yeah,
And
man.
yeah, I look forward to delving further into that Node Red rabbit hole. It does look like a super, super powerful tool.
No, thanks, and thanks for inviting me, and thanks for this chit chat, man. This was really good. Your questions are really great.
Oh, to tell you the truth, I didn't even have questions prepared. I thought I'd just go totally just off the top of my head, and it's
It
quite
worked.
cool. So, because I run a podcast for my other business, and yeah, I have to be quite rigorous in setting up questions and stuff to make sure that I don't go off track. But it's really fun, in this little hobby or business or whatever you call it of mine. It's really fun to be able to be more relaxed and
Yeah,
just chat with someone, get to know them, and fire different I love the whole interviewing process.
awesome,
I
man.
just I enjoy people, and I think I really like your way that you are sort of approaching this whole creator sort of environment that you're doing. I think it's very real, and you really yeah, you come across as a very caring and nurturing sort of person, which I
Oh,
think is I
that's
think
great.
is what people like about you.
Oh, that's cool. All I have are the comments, so I can't tell.
Awesome, Michael. Thank you.
Awesome, man. Thanks, Simon. It was great.